The nightclub is noisy and crowded. Bright lights flash. Music blares from the open doors. Ayana stands to the side. She's waiting for a friend who's running late. She looks around. Her gaze falls on a man. He's standing next to a black car. He's wearing a dark suit. He's not drinking or dancing. He's just watching. There are two other men next to him, and they look serious. Ayana likes him. He looks calm and strong. She decides to approach him. Quickly, before she changes her mind. Ayana comes closer and smiles. "Hi, you look bored. Would you like me to keep you company?" she says. The man slowly turns his head. His eyes are dark and attentive. He looks at her silently. "I'm not alone," he answers quietly. "Oh, those guys?" Ayana waves her hand at his companions. "I mean you. My name is Ayana." She touches his sleeve. He looks at her hand. He doesn't move away. "Go away," he says calmly. But Ayana doesn't leave. She laughs. "What, are you scared? I'm not dangerous. Let's just go get something to drink. Just one cup." She continues talking, joking, touching his hand again. She feels confident. She doesn't see how one of his men tenses. She doesn't see how irritation, then cold interest, flashes in the man's eyes. The man looks at Ayana. She's beautiful. She's brazen. And she clearly doesn't know who he is. He doesn't like it. But he's also curious. He's tired. And he doesn't like being bothered in public. He makes a decision. He abruptly turns his back on her. He gives a barely perceptible nod to his men. He speaks so quietly it's almost inaudible. Take her to me." Then he opens the door of his car and gets inside without looking back. Ayana doesn't have time to understand what's happening. Two large men approach her from either side. They grab her by the arms tightly. "Hey, let go! What are you doing?" she screams. They don't answer. They quickly lead her to another black car. They open the door and seat her in the back seat. One sits next to her, the other behind the wheel. The door slams. The lock clicks. The car starts moving. Ayana slams on the glass. "Let me out! Help!" But the glass is tinted. No one from outside can see. The car pulls into traffic. The guard next to it is silent and stares ahead. Ayana leans back in her seat. Her hands are shaking. She's breathing quickly. She realizes she's been taken away by force. She's scared. The car drives through the city at night. Ayana tries to calm down. She looks at the streets, but doesn't recognize them. The guard nearby is talking on the phone. "Yes, we're taking you. Everything's calm." He listens silently. "Got it, boss. Sees," he says and hangs up. The word boss grates on my ears. Ayana freezes. She remembers the man outside the club, his calm face, his orders, his expensive clothes. The security guards don't call him by his name. They call him boss. The pieces of the puzzle are falling into place in her head. She's heard stories about people who control the streets, about Korean gangs, about bosses no one sees. A chill runs down her spine. She realizes who she's just been flirting with, who she's been acting so brazenly with. She looks at her hands. They're still shaking. This time, not just from fear, from the realization of her mistake. She's gotten herself into big trouble, and it's her own fault. The car stops in the underground garage of a high-rise building. Everything is quiet and clean. The guards escort Ayana out of the car. She no longer screams. She walks between them, her legs feeling weak. They take the elevator up. The guard presses the button for the top floor. The elevator moves quickly and silently. Ayana looks at the numbers above the door. She tries to remember the floor number, but her brain refuses to work. The elevator opens directly into the apartment's hallway. The guards gently nudge Ayana forward. She steps inside. The click of the door closing is heard behind her. The guards don't enter. They remain outside. Ayana stands and stares. The apartment is enormous. Tall, floor-to-ceiling windows offer views of the city at night, its lights shining through. Everything looks very expensive. Expensive parquet flooring, modern, light-colored furniture, a few paintings in thin frames on the walls. But there are no personal belongings here. No photographs, no knickknacks, no books on the table. It feels like a luxurious hotel room. Beautiful, but empty. Soulless. Footsteps are heard. Elle and De-Yun emerge from the depths of the apartment. He has taken off his jacket. He is now wearing only dark trousers and a white shirt with the collar unbuttoned. He is carrying 2 glass glasses of water. He places one glass on the low table next to Ayana. "Drink. You must be thirsty," he says in his quiet, even voice. He doesn't look at her menacingly. He's simply stating a fact. Ayana doesn't move. She looks at the glass, then at him. Fear grips her. "Why did you bring me here?" Her voice trembles. I didn't do anything to anyone. I liked you. I thought we could just talk. That's not a crime, is it? Dahyun takes a sip from his glass. He looks at her over the rim. You behaved like a crime against common sense, he says calmly. Approaching a stranger like that. Especially, me. I didn't know who you were, Ayana exclaims, her fear turning to despair. I just saw a cute guy. You can't do that. Call a taxi, I'll go home and we'll forget about this. I won't tell anyone, I swear. Dahyun puts down the glass. He walks slowly across the room, stopping at the huge window. He looks out at the city. You're already here. You've seen this place before. You've heard what they call me. Forget? He turns his head slightly towards her. No, this doesn't work anymore. He doesn't shout. He doesn't make any direct threats. But there's such a confident strength in his calm that it makes it even more terrifying. He has no doubt of his right to rule here. He's the master. She's an uninvited guest who's placed herself in his hands. Ayana whispers. Dahyun turns to face her. He studies her, her frightened eyes, her posture. I haven't decided yet, he says honestly. You interrupted my plans. You attracted attention. I don't like that. Usually for that. He doesn't finish the sentence. He shrugs. But you're unusual. Stupid, but brave. He comes closer. Ayana takes a step back, leaning her back against the wall. Don't be afraid, he says, stopping 2 steps away. If I wanted to hurt you, it would have happened in the car by now, or somewhere else. He says it as simply as if he were talking about the weather, and it rings true. Ayana suddenly realizes that her life now depends on his mood, on his whim. This realization is paralyzing. Time passes. They are silent. Dahyun looks at her. Ayana looks at the floor. The initial panic subsides a little, leaving behind trembling and emptiness. She glances at him furtively. He just stands there. He's thinking. Are you hungry? He asks suddenly. The question is so ordinary, so mundane, that Ayana is taken aback for a second. She nods automatically. Dahyun heads to the kitchen, which is part of the living room. He opens the huge refrigerator. He takes out containers and some fruit. He places everything on the counter. You can take whatever you want, or make your own. Everything works on the stove, he says. He doesn't eat. He picks up his glass of water again. Ayana slowly approaches the counter. Her hands are still shaking. She opens the container. There's rice and vegetables inside. The food smells delicious. Suddenly, she realizes she's hungry. All that adrenaline has drained her. She takes a plate from the cupboard and puts some food on it. She eats standing up. The food is good. This strange, normal action in the midst of this nightmare calms her down a little. Dahyun watches. He sees the tension ease a little from her shoulders. He sees her eating. She looks young, normal, and very tired from fear. You can take a shower if you want, he says again. His voice is less distant now. Just neutral. There's a door over there. Everything's inside. Ayana looks at him. She doesn't understand his game. Kindness? Or a way to lull him into a false sense of security? I don't know, she mutters. Do as you wish, he says, turning to the window. I'm not a jailer. For now, you're my unexpected guest. Ayana makes up her mind. She goes into the bathroom. She locks the door. The room is large, with a glass shower. Everything is new and clean. On the shelf lie unopened toothbrushes and soap. Everything for guests who, it seems, have never been. She turns on the water. The hot shower washes away the sweat of fear and the tension of the last few hours. She stands under the stream and cries, quietly so he won't hear. Then she dries herself with a large, soft towel. Her clothes now feel dirty and foreign to her. She puts them back on and steps out. The lights are dim in the living room. Dahyun is sitting in a large armchair. He's staring off into space. He seems tired, too. Ayana stops in the middle of the room. She doesn't know what to do. Lie down on the floor? Sit on the couch? Sit down, he says without looking. Rest. We'll talk in the morning. She sits carefully on the edge of the huge sofa. She holds herself upright. They are silent. The silence stretches for a minute, then another. It is filled not with fear, but with a heavy weariness and a strange awkwardness. Ayana looks at his profile in the dim light. He doesn't look like a monster. He looks alone, as trapped in this beautiful, empty box as she is now. The thought comes unexpectedly. He turns his head and catches her gaze. He doesn't look away. He simply stares. And in that gaze, there is no longer any irritation or cold calculation. There is weariness and a question. Ayana doesn't know what's happening, but her body, tormented by fear, searches for some kind of anchor. and his silent presence, strangely, has become that anchor. He is the cause of her troubles, but now he is the only thing here. She doesn't remember who made the first move. It seems she simply couldn't bear the tension and wrapped her arms around herself, and he stood up from the chair. He came over. Not to grab her, he just stood next to her. She looks up at him. He touches her cheek with the back of his hand. The movement is almost gentle. Studying. This wasn't planned by any of them. It was mistake after mistake, but adrenaline and fatigue distort everything. Fear turns into a sharp, forbidden attraction. His confidence becomes magnetic, her courage and vulnerability, a dangerous magnet. He leans in. She doesn't pull away. Their lips meet. It's not a kiss of tenderness. It's a kiss of mutual desperation, curiosity, and the release of all pent-up emotions. It's an explosion. And then everything happens on its own, simply, quietly, in the semi-darkness of this faceless apartment, without words. They give in to an impulse that is stronger than fear and common sense. He leads her to the bedroom. She goes because she is already too deeply immersed in this maelstrom. The night passes in a rush of impetuous, almost angry passion, followed by a deep, empty sleep. This isn't love. This isn't romance. This is the physical consequence of an extreme situation, a mistake made by fear, loneliness, and a dangerous attraction. When morning comes, they will both know it. But now, in the darkness, they are simply allowing something to happen that was never meant to be. Early morning light filters through the blinds, creating long streaks across the floor. Ayana wakes up first. Her consciousness slowly returns. First, she feels the warmth of someone else's body next to her. Then she remembers where she is. And what happened? She freezes. Everything inside her collapses. Yesterday's mixture of fear, despair, and desire disappears. Only cold, clear reality remains. She's in bed with a stranger, a dangerous man, her boss. She slept with him. Voluntarily? Not quite, but not against her will either. It was a weakness, a huge mistake. She carefully raises herself up on her elbow and looks at the sleeping man. Dahyun. His face seems younger when relaxed, but even in sleep, he looks collected. She slowly, trying not to creak the bed, moves away. Her feet touch the cold parquet. She stands up and finds her dress on the floor. She quickly pulls it on. She needs to leave, right now, while he's sleeping. She creeps toward the bedroom door. Where? The voice behind her was quiet but completely calm. He wasn't sleeping. He was simply lying there with his eyes closed. Ayana turns around. Dahyun is lying with her hands behind her head. He looks at her. There's no morning softness in his gaze, only a cold assessment. I'm leaving, Ayana says, her voice hoarse. You said we'd talk in the morning. I listened. Now I'm leaving. He doesn't move. Close the door and sit down, he says calmly. The conversation hasn't started yet. Ayana stands rooted to the spot. Run away? Try? She looks at his calm face. He doesn't look angry, but he looks as if he's controlling her every move. She slowly closes the bedroom door. She doesn't sit up. She stands in the middle of the living room, hugging herself. Dahyun emerges from the bedroom a minute later. He's already wearing pants and pulling on a clean t-shirt. He walks past her into the kitchen and turns on the coffee machine. The humming sound fills the silence. Do you want coffee? He asks, as if it were any other morning. Ayana is silent. She looks out the window. She needs to collect her thoughts. She needs to figure out how to get out of the situation. Her gaze falls on a small desk in the corner of the living room. On it lie a few papers and a folder. Dahyun turns her back to her, taking out the cups. Ayana takes a step toward the table. She doesn't know why. Maybe she's looking for a weapon? Keys? Something that will give her an advantage. On the top sheet of paper in the folder, she sees the logo of some foreign company, complex financial terms, and below, a signature. Lee Dahyun, and his photograph. Businesslike, stern. But that's not all. Next to the folder lies a dark blue passport. It's slightly open. Ayana's eyes automatically skim the page. She sees his full name, his date of birth, and most importantly, his address. The very address where they are now. Printed in clear letters. She freezes. Now she knows not only who he is, she knows the exact place where he lives. It is the most guarded secret of such a man, and she sees it. Sugar? Dahyun asks from the kitchen. Ayana jerks her hand away as if she's been burned. She steps away from the table. Her heart starts beating wildly. She saw. She understood. No, thank you, she manages to say. Dahyun turns around. He's holding 2 cups of coffee. He looks at her. Then his gaze moves to the table, to the slightly open passport, to her face, which she can't seem to calm. He places the cups on the bar. Slowly, quietly, his movements become precise. Like a predator's, he walks past her to the desk. He doesn't look at the passport, he looks at her. "What did you see?" His voice is soft, but there's not a drop of warmth in it. "Nothing," Ayana says quickly. "I was just looking out the window." He silently takes the passport, closes it, puts it in the desk drawer, and turns the key. The click of the lock sounds deafeningly loud in the silence. He looks at her again. His eyes now study every feature of her face, every movement of her eyes. He sees panic. He sees knowledge. "You saw the address," he says. It's not a question. It's a sentence. Ayana wants to deny it. She wants to scream that she didn't look, but the words stick in her throat. She can only stare at him, her eyes wide. The fear returns, that same cold, sticky feeling that makes her hands go numb. Dahyun doesn't move. He stands opposite her. His face is a stony mask, but his eyes are racing with cold, quick thought. He's assessing the damage, calculating the risks. The silence in the apartment becomes absolute. The distant sounds of the city don't reach here. Only their breathing can be heard. Hers. Rapid, intermittent. His. Even. Almost inaudible. He understands everything. She's a witness, not just some random girl. Is she a police officer, as she said yesterday? Or not? It doesn't matter. Now she knows his face, his operational name, and most terrifying of all, his real address. The place where he sleeps. A place known only to the most trusted people. She understands everything. He's a criminal. He has enemies. He has competitors. He has the police. His address is his greatest vulnerability. And now she keeps that vulnerability in her head. She's a walking threat to his safety, his life. Neither of them says a word. They don't need to speak. Everything is clear and wordless. It's as if last night never happened. There is only the present moment, and it hangs between them like a block of ice. He looks at her, and she sees cold calculation in his eyes. Those very options she was afraid to consider. Options that now, after her discovery, become much more real. She looks at him, and an icy terror grips her. Not the burning fear of the unknown that she'd felt in the car, but a cold, clear realization. The realization of the abyss she'd peered into. And that he can't just let her go. The silence is oppressive. Ayana knows she needs to speak, right now. Otherwise, that icy calculation in his eyes will end in something irreversible. "I work for the police," she blurts out. The words ring loudly in the silence. Dahyun's face doesn't change. It seems he expected this, or is simply not surprised by anything. "Go on," he says evenly. "But yesterday, I was off duty." Ayana speaks quickly, her words slurring. "I was just relaxing, waiting for a friend. I saw you and I liked you. Really. It was personal, you understand? No assignment. No one was watching. I just made a mistake." She looks at him, begging him to believe her. It's the truth, the bitter, stupid truth. "I didn't even have a gun on me. Nothing. I was just a girl at a club." Dahyun slowly runs his hand over his chin. He's assessing. "Your name? Rank? Department?" Ayana hesitates. To say so would be to confirm her identity, to make the threat to him concrete. Not to say so would make her look like a liar. "Ayana Okoro. Intern. Documentary Checks Department," she mutters. "This isn't the organized crime unit. It's a boring paperwork department. Maybe that will calm him down a bit." He nods, as if entering data into an invisible database. "Documentary checks," he repeats. "And this address is now in your head, by accident, during a personal meeting." He says this as if he's dissecting a complex legal dispute. But the stakes in this dispute are her life. Dahyun moves to the window. He stands with his back to her, looking out at the waking city. "I'm like a ghost," he says quietly but clearly. "My work is visible to everyone. The results of my decisions are felt by many. But me, no one sees me. My face, my real name, my place where I sleep, it's a myth. It's emptiness. It's something that doesn't exist to the outside world." He turns. His eyes are dark and serious. "People like me live long lives for one reason. We don't exist. We have no points of reference. No one knows where to look. No one knows exactly who to look for. I go by a dozen names. I sleep in different places. But this place," he gestures with his hand, indicating the apartment. "This isn't just an apartment. This is my only permanent place. This is everything that's mine. The real thing. Here, I don't play a role. 3 people know it, and now, you." He speaks without boasting. It's a statement of fact. It explains why the click of the desk drawer lock sounded like a gunshot to him. You're now a living dot on the map, a coordinate, a vulnerability. If you leave and somewhere, someday, accidentally let it slip, if your colleagues start digging into you, if my enemies somehow find you, he doesn't finish. He shrugs. It's not a threat. It's physics. You possess information that could destroy my world, and I can't let that happen. Dahyun's words fall like stones. Ayana listens, and in her head, above the fear, a cold, professional mind begins to work. The mind of a police trainee who knows the procedures. She keeps the address in her head, the name, the fact of the kidnapping, the fact of what happened next. If she leaves here and goes to the station, if she tells everything, she's a victim and a witness. She can lead them right here. To him, it will be a big case, the kidnapping of a police officer. Her career will take off. From a documents department intern, she will become a hero who brought down a powerful figure. The risks are enormous. He's dangerous. He has resources, but the police have more. There's a chance. She looks at him, at this ghost. She can make him real to the world. Put his picture on this bulletin board. It's her job, her duty. But then she remembers last night, his tired, not angry gaze at the window, his quiet drink, his questions now, without shouting, without violence. And that night, which was a mistake, but not violence. She was complicit in that mistake, and she remembers the most important thing. She wasn't there on duty. She broke the rules by approaching him. How will this look in the report? To the judge? They won't take her word for it. Her reputation will be ruined. The intern asked to be approached by a mafia boss. Her career will be ruined, even if he's caught. She's torn between duty, career opportunity, fear, and a strange feeling of injustice towards him. This feeling frightens her most of all. While Ayana thinks about her report, Dahyun thinks about the basement. Not in this tower. He has other places. Safe. Secluded. There's one special one. With a room. Without windows. With a strong door. You can keep problems there until they're solved. It's logical. It's safe. She'll disappear. They won't look for her here. Her colleagues will start looking for the girl who disappeared after the club. It will take time. And he will have time to think, to decide what to do with this point on the map. Erase it forever or find another solution. As long as she's isolated, she poses no threat. He looks at her. She's young. She's scared. She laughed yesterday. She didn't look at him like he was a monster. She said, "I like you." And he, in some crazy moment, believed her. The idea of the basement seems right, professional, but something inside him resists. That something is a memory of how she looked at him that morning, before she saw the passport. Not with fear, but with a complex mixture of shame and confusion, like an ordinary person after a big mistake. He dismisses the thought. Sentimentality kills. Logic says, isolate, secure. The threat must be under control. "You're thinking of taking me somewhere else," Ayana suddenly says. Her voice interrupts his thoughts. She looks at him, and the previous panic is gone from her eyes. There's a tired understanding. Somewhere safer, without windows, where they won't find me while you decide what to do with me. He doesn't answer. He just looks. His silence is the answer. "That would be a smart move on your part," she says quietly, almost under her breath. "Oh, absolutely smart." Her words about a reasonable move hang in the air. Ayana sees his gaze become even more distant, analytical. This isn't a conversation anymore. This is a negotiation. And she has very few cards to play. "They'll be looking for me," she says, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm a police officer, a trainee even. When I don't show up for work, when I don't answer my calls, the procedures will begin. First my colleagues, then my superiors. They'll add me to the database. There will be an investigation. The cameras outside the club, they could have caught me, or you, or your car. It's a risk for you, a big risk. If you isolate me, it will only get bigger." She says this based on knowledge from the academy. Missing personnel search procedures. This isn't an empty threat. It's a fact. Dahyun listens. He doesn't interrupt. "You disappeared after the nightclub," he says when she falls silent. "Your colleagues will check the cameras. They'll see you walking voluntarily to a black car. You don't look like a kidnapping victim. You look like a girl leaving with guys. Maybe to a party. Maybe somewhere else. They look for a girl like that differently, slower, and less diligently, unless there's obvious evidence of a crime." He speaks calmly, as if reading from a script. And in a few days, if you don't show up, your colleagues will start thinking maybe you just left, or maybe you're in trouble. But they don't have a body, no witnesses to the violence. There's only a recording of you smiling and getting into a car. That changes everything. His words are precise and terrifying in their logic. He's right. In the recording, she really was walking on her own. She didn't resist. She didn't scream. She simply got into the car. It was a kidnapping, but proving it would be nearly impossible. It all looked like she chose it. But I'm here against my will, Ayana says, her voice laced with desperation. You're keeping me here. Holding you? Da-hyun raises an eyebrow slightly. He points to the door. The door is unlocked. Sleep. You're not chained. You're my guest, who made a mistake. A very serious mistake. And now we're both dealing with the consequences. I didn't harm you. I offered you food, a shower, a bed, and you stayed. He pauses to let his words sink in. If you walked out the door right now and went to the police, what would you say? That you spent the night with a dangerous criminal of your own free will and then changed your mind in the morning? That he showed you his passport? That sounds like a bad romance, Ayana, or like a provocation on your part. Who would believe it? It's not a scream, not a growl. It's a cold, merciless statement of the facts. This is her first real threat, not physical, legal, reputational, psychological. She finds herself trapped not only within these four walls, but also in the version of events he so calmly presents. Ayana can't stand still any longer. She's overwhelmed by the energy of fear and helplessness. She turns away from him and begins pacing the living room. Her steps are small and nervous. Her gaze darts around the room, catching glimpses of details. She approaches the front door. Indeed, there are no additional locks on the inside, just a simple handle and latch. But there are guards outside. And even if there aren't any, where will she go? In what? No phone, no money. She doesn't know where this house is. She looks at the huge windows, panoramic glazing. They don't open, just a small vent at the top for ventilation. Even if the glass were broken, they're at a tremendous height. There's a way down. There's no way out. She walks into the kitchen. She studies the drawers. The knives. They're out of sight. Everything is put away. Kettles, cutlery. Nothing that could be used as a serious weapon. Everything is sleek and minimalist. She peers into the half-open bedroom door. There are large windows there too. The door to the walk-in closet. The door to the bathroom. There's no exit. Her walk is a silent acknowledgement of her situation. She studies the cage. A beautiful, expensive one, but a cage nonetheless. And with each step, she realizes that physical escape is now impossible. Her only weapon is her head, and her status, which, as it turns out, isn't all that powerful. Da-hyun doesn't move. He stands leaning against the kitchen counter. He watches her nervously move around the apartment. He sees her checking the door, the windows, the drawers. He doesn't stop her. He lets her see for herself. This is also part of his calculation. Let her see that escape is impossible. Let her exhaust this energy. Then, perhaps, she'll start thinking more rationally. Or, conversely, make a mistake that will give him an excuse to act more harshly. His gaze is as attentive as a surgeon's. He notes how she flinches at the sound of the elevator in the shaft, probably the neighbors. How she pauses for a second by the window, looking down, her shoulders slumping slightly. Despair. Good. Despair gives way to acceptance. Acceptance can give way to cooperation, or to rebellion. He needs to watch. He's considering his next step. The basement option is still on the table, but it's expensive. He needs to organize transportation, security, and logistics, and that creates new risks. More people will be in the know, more points where something could go wrong. The second option is to try to negotiate. But can he trust her? She's a police officer, a trainee even. Her duty is to report. Even if she gives her word, fear of the law or career ambitions might prevail. The third option, he pushes it away. It's too early, too radical, too dirty. And something inside him, some weak, almost forgotten voice, resists even the thought of it when he looks at her. While he watches, waits, calculates. Ayana completes her circle and stops in the middle of the living room, facing him. She exhales. It's clear the short walk has eased some of the tension. There's more weariness in her eyes now than panic. Are you going to hurt me? She asks bluntly. Her voice is quiet but clear. She looks him straight in the eye. This is a simple question, the most important one. Everything else is details. The basement, the career, the negotiations. Everything is secondary until this one is answered. Dahyun pulls away from the counter. He takes a few steps toward her, but stops at a respectful distance. He doesn't want to scare her again. I didn't plan this from the start, he says, just as bluntly. And now, I don't want to. I don't enjoy it. It's not my style. It creates more problems than it solves. He's serious. It doesn't sound like a lie. It sounds professional. Harm is ineffective, dirty, and attracts unnecessary attention. But, Ayana insists, there's always a but. But the situation has changed, he admits. You're not just some random girl. You're a police officer who now knows my face, my real name, and my address. That changes the balance. It turns you from an inconvenience into a direct threat. A threat to my safety, my freedom, my life. He says this without pathos. I have to respond to threats. It's my basic instinct. It's how I survive. It's how I remain a ghost. You became a threat to me, Ayana. Not by choice, by stupidity, by chance. But the fact remains. I have to do something about it. He looks at her, and something other than calculation appears in his gaze. Something like regret or weariness at having to make such decisions. I don't like the options I have. They're all bad. For you. And ultimately, for me too. But I can't just open the door and say, go. Not until you give me some kind of guarantee. Some reason to believe this threat is neutralized. And you don't have that reason. You can only ask. And I can't build my security on someone else's requests. It's an honest answer. Perhaps the first truly honest answer he's ever given. He's not promising safety. He's not painting a rosy picture. He's simply laying out the situation as he sees it. Two people trapped in circumstances they've created together. And now they need to find a way out that won't lead to disaster for one of them, or for both of them. Silence descends upon the room again, but it's different now. Not icy with terror, but heavy and reflective. The hostility has subsided. All that remains is the enormous problem that sits between them, and they both now see it, not each other as an enemy. The heavy silence that follows his words stretches for several seconds. Ayana looks at the floor, then looks up at him again. A single idea is brewing within her. Simple and naive, but she has no other. Let's just forget, she says quietly. Forget everything that happened. I'm walking out this door. I'm going back to my life. I'm pretending this night never happened. That I never saw your face. That I don't know your name or this address. To me, you're just a guy from the club that didn't work out. I give you my word. My word. She says this with as much sincerity as she can muster. Her gaze is clear, direct. She wants him to see that she's not lying, that she's ready to erase all of this from her memory, just to return to normal life. You disappear like a ghost, and I just do my job. We never cross paths. It was a nightmare that's over. And that's it. She falls silent, waiting for his reaction. There's logic in her proposal. The purest way out. Break up and never mention it again. Dahyun listens without interrupting. His face is expressionless. When she finishes, he slowly shakes his head. Not in anger, regretfully. On my word as a police officer, he says. How can I trust him? He pauses, choosing his words. Your job, your oath, is to report crimes. I'm a walking crime. You know it. You say you'll forget. But what about tomorrow? Next week? When you go to bed and dream about this room? When your boss at work tells you about an investigation into people like me? When you're offered a promotion for useful information? Words. They're just air. They're worthless when your career, your duty, or simply your own fear, which will come back to haunt you later, is at stake. He moves a little closer, not to threaten, but to get a better look at her face. Trust can't be built overnight, especially not like this. Trust is about mutual leverage, shared secrets, something that keeps both sides on balance. We don't have that. You have a secret that could destroy me. And I have what? Only your word. That's not a balance. It's a rock hanging over my head, and you're holding the thread. Ayana wants to object, but she knows he's right. Her word means nothing to him. She has no guarantee of her silence. What then? She asks, a weary resignation in her voice. You said all the options are bad. Dahyun moves to the couch and sits down. He looks exhausted by this conversation. This situation. I don't know what to do, he admits. It seems to be the first thing he says without complete conviction. I need time. To think, to understand, if I can trust you, or find another way out. He looks at her. Stay here. For a few days. Ayana freezes. As what? A hostage? As a guest who's learned too much. He corrects. No chains, No basement, for now. You live here, like yesterday. You eat, sleep, shower. I watch. We talk. Maybe I'll understand that you won't betray me. Maybe I'll figure out how to create that balance. Or maybe, he trails off, but that will give us both time. You to convince me to make a decision that isn't based solely on panic. It's not a solution. It's a delay. But there's a strange logic to his words. It's better than being sent to the basement immediately. Ayana considers his offer. A few days in this gilded cage, under his watch, in limbo, but with relative freedom within it, without violence, for now. What does she have in return? Escape is impossible. Forceful resistance is futile. Threatening him with her career is ridiculous. She has no leverage, none at all. She understands she has no choice, only the illusion of choice. To agree is to buy time. Perhaps something will change in these few days. Perhaps she will find a way to connect with the outside world. Perhaps he will truly soften, or perhaps not. But she already has a no now. She sighs heavily. All her fighting spirit, fueled by fear, has now drained away. Only a deep weariness remains. Okay, she says quietly, almost in a whisper. A few days? She doesn't ask how much exactly. She simply accepts it as a given. But I need things. A toothbrush, a change of clothes, at least the bare essentials. Dahyun nods. That can be arranged. No questions asked. Day breaks. Sunlight floods the living room, making it less hostile, but no less alien. Dahyun, he's busy with his own affairs. He spends a lot of time in his office behind closed doors. Sometimes he speaks on the phone in a low, businesslike voice. Ayana hears snatches of phrases in Korean and English. Nothing personal, just business. She's left to her own devices. She takes a shower. She looks around the apartment again, no longer panicked, but with the cold curiosity of a prisoner. There are almost no books. There's a large television, but she doesn't turn it on. There's no music either. The silence is oppressive, but it's better than screaming. She tries to sleep on the couch, but sleep won't come. She sits by the window and looks out at the city. She sees people in the distance, cars, life going on as usual. She feels cut off from the rest of the world. Like in an aquarium, they barely speak. When they cross paths in the kitchen for water, they exchange brief nods or meaningless phrases. Pass the water, please. Would you like some tea? Communication is kept to a bare minimum. The tension hasn't disappeared. It's simply quieted, subsided, transformed into awkwardness and wary observation of each other. Dahyun sometimes glances at her from his office. He sees her sitting motionless by the window. She looks lost, but not broken. That's important. By evening, Ayani finds it unbearable to sit idle. Inaction gnaws at her more than fear. She gets up and goes to the kitchen. She opens the refrigerator. It's well stocked. Vegetables, meat, sauces, rice. She decides to cook dinner, not because she's hungry, but because it's an action. It's something normal, something that reminds her of life outside. She finds a frying pan, a knife, a cutting board. She's cooking a simple stew, chicken with vegetables and rice. She's focused on the process. She's chopping onions, carrots, and peppers. The familiar smell of food is a calming sensation. The sizzling sound of the pan fills the quiet apartment with life. Dahyun comes out of the office, smelling the scent. He stops at the kitchen threshold and watches. He doesn't offer to help. He simply stands and watches her move around the kitchen, confident and familiar. When the food is ready, Ayana puts it on 2 plates. She places one plate on the counter next to him, silently. Then she picks up her own and sits at the table in the living room. Dahyun slowly approaches the counter. He looks at the plate, then at her. It's a simple gesture, but in their situation, it carries weight. She cooked the food. Could she have mixed something in? No, she's eating it herself. It's a gesture of, what? Not peace. A truce. A temporary ceasefire. He picks up a fork and takes a bite. He eats in silence. Then he nods, still reserved. Delicious. Thank you. That's all he says. But for Ayana, it's more than just a food appraisal. It's a confirmation of a fragile, silent pact. For now, they're not enemies. They're simply 2 people sharing the same roof and the same silence, too loud with unspoken thoughts. The silence at dinner becomes too heavy. The sound of forks hitting plates seems unnaturally loud. Ayana feels she must say something, anything to lighten the mood. The kitchen has good technology, she says, looking at her plate. The pan heats evenly. Dahyun looks up, a little surprised by the topic. Yes, he agrees after a pause. I care about everything working properly. No surprises. Another moment of silence. You're a good cook, he adds, as if continuing his thought. Is it a family thing? The question is simple, mundane, not dangerous. Ayana shrugs. My mom taught me. She said it was a basic skill, like doing laundry or paying bills. What about you? Do you cook? He shakes his head slightly. No, I usually order. Or, iced tea. Someone brings it. I don't have time. And I don't really want to. The conversation flows slowly, with pauses. They talk about neutral matters, what the weather is like outside, sunny, that there's good coffee in the fridge. It's imported. How difficult it was to find this apartment. He doesn't answer the question, and she doesn't press the issue. This isn't a friendly conversation. It's a cautious testing of the waters. A test. Is it possible to talk about anything that doesn't involve threats, addresses, or the police? It turns out it is, but it's awkward. Every word is weighed. Every topic is dropped as soon as it starts to get too personal. They finish eating. Ayana gets up to clear the plates. She carries them to the kitchen sink. As she turns, her gaze accidentally glides across the floor toward the bedroom, to the spot in the doorway where he stopped her last night. As she tried to leave, she freezes for a second. Her hands tremble slightly. She quickly looks away, but it's too late. Dahyun, who had been watching her, also looked at the same spot. He understood everything. The air was filled with the things they weren't talking about what happened in that room, about the strange, misguided intimacy that arose from fear and loneliness. The awkwardness returns with a vengeance. All the neutral topics they had worked so hard to find crumble. The silence becomes thick and uncomfortable again. Ayana is concentrating on washing the dishes, her gaze fixed on the stream of water. Dahyun pushes back his chair and goes to the window. He stands with his hands behind his back, looking out at the evening city, but it's probably not him he sees. No one knows what to say. Sorry? Pointless. Let's forget it. They've already tried. It was a mistake? It's obvious to both of them. They just remain silent, each in their own corner of the room, connected by this unspoken, awkward memory that will now always be between them. The dishes are done. Ayana dries her hands and doesn't know what to do with herself. She decides to retrace her steps yesterday and sit on the edge of the sofa. Dahyun is still by the window. He speaks without turning around. His voice is quiet, almost muffled by the glass. You know, that night at the club, I liked you too. The words are simple, but in the context of everything that came before and after, they sound like an explosion. Ayana looks at his back, her eyes wide. She didn't expect this. Never. You were bright, he continues, still looking out the window. Funny, and very persistent. No one comes to me like that. Usually people are afraid, or pretend. But you were real. Silly, but real. I liked that. He pauses, as if collecting his thoughts. That's why I ordered you brought here. Not just because you were so impudent and not to punish you. I was curious. I wanted to talk, but not out there, on the street. But here, where there are no prying eyes. He finally turns around. His face is serious, but his eyes lack the usual cold assessment. There's something else. A tired confession. Of course, I messed everything up. And you did too. We both messed things up. But the beginning wasn't so bad. For me. Ayana is silent. She digests his words. There's no lie in them. She senses it. It explains a lot. His initial irritation, mixed with interest. His desire to get her away from prying eyes. Even his behavior here in the apartment. Not like a jailer, but more like an awkward landlord who brought a problem home but doesn't know what to do about it. His words, I liked you, warmed something cold and clenched inside her. It doesn't excuse what happened, but it puts a different spin on it. This wasn't just lust or a show of power. It was attraction, mistaken, dangerous, but mutual. She looks down at her hands clasped in her lap. My approach was stupid, she says quietly, and dangerous. I realize that now. I acted as if the whole world was a safe playground. I only thought about how handsome and interesting you were. I didn't consider for a second who you might really be. What the consequences might be. She looks up at him. I caused this whole situation. Completely. If I had just walked by, none of this would have happened. Not this apartment. Nothing. I put my head in the noose, and then I was surprised when they hanged me. There's no hysteria in her confession. There's a bitter, mature understanding. She sees her share of responsibility. And there's strength in this confession, a strength that perhaps deserves a little more credibility than the mere word of a frightened girl. After his words and her confession, something shifts in the room. The tension doesn't disappear, but it's transformed. It's no longer the tension between victim and threat. It's the tension between two people who have committed a series of stupid mistakes and found themselves trapped together. A trap they partly created themselves. Evening falls. Ayana is no longer huddled in the corner of the sofa. She sits with her legs tucked under her arms wrapped around her knees. Daeyoon is in her chair. They aren't watching TV. They are simply in the same room. Silence once again becomes the protagonist, but now it's not oppressive, but reflective. Full of unspoken thoughts and questions that are no longer so scary to ask. What will you do when I'm gone? Ayana asks, breaking the silence. She doesn't look at him. Daeyoon considers. The same as always. Working, managing things, living in this empty box, trying to remain a ghost. There's a slight, tired bitterness in his voice. And you? Going back to your ID department? Ayana nods. Yes, I guess. I'll look at the papers and think that somewhere out there, outside the window, there's another world. One about which I now know a little more than I should. He looks at her. Do you regret it? What did you find out? She is silent for a long time. I don't know. I don't know yet. But I would like for this meeting to happen differently. Usually, in a cafe or through friends. He laughs quietly. The sound is unexpectedly warm. I don't have friends like that. And I don't go to cafes. She looks at him and suddenly smiles too. Weakly, but it's the first real smile in a long time. I see. Then probably all that was left was the nightclub. The joke hangs in the air. Ridiculous, bitter, but a joke nonetheless. And that removes the final layer of ice. What happens next isn't like the first time. There's no despair, no flash of fear or attraction. There's a slow, almost hesitant approach. He gets up from the chair and sits next to her on the sofa. Not close, but no longer far. They talk again, about trivial things, but this time without the awkward pauses. And then the conversation fades again. He looks at her. She doesn't look away. There's no demand in his gaze. There's a question, and she answers with her own gaze. With agreement. Not a deal. Not out of fear. But because in this strange, distorted world they find themselves in, he's the only thing familiar to her. And she, it seems, to him, too. He reaches out and touches her hair. Very carefully. She doesn't pull away. She closes her eyes. This time, it's different. Slower. Quieter. No rush. They explore each other, as if trying to rediscover the person they fell in love with that first moment at the club, before everything went wrong. This isn't an attempt to forget. This is an attempt to find something real in the pile of rubble they've created. When he leads her to the bedroom, she follows. And when they are together, fear and calculation finally recede, giving way to simple human warmth and the understanding that, despite everything, they care about each other. It's still a mistake. But this mistake already bears the stamp of mutual agreement and a strange tenderness. The light of a new morning floods the bedroom. Ayana wakes up first. She feels his hand on her stomach, his warm breath in her hair. The first thought isn't fear. The first thought is a calm awareness. I'm here, and he's here. She doesn't jump up. She slowly rolls over onto her back, trying not to wake him. He wakes up from her movement, his eyes open. They are clear, without a trace of yesterday's fatigue or cold judgment. He looks at her, silently. Then his lips touch her shoulder, lightly, almost weightlessly. Good morning, he says, his voice hoarse from sleep. Good morning, she replies in a whisper. They lie there, looking at each other. No one is rushing to get up to escape or make a fateful decision. There's only this quiet morning and a strange sense of peace that doesn't square with the reality of their situation. He's the first to break the silence. I don't want to hurt you, Ayana. He says it simply, as a statement of fact about the weather. I know, she replies just as simply. And I don't want to hurt you. These words lack the panic of previous days. There is a tired, mature clarity. They stand up. Their actions are measured, calm. Ayana goes to the shower. Daeyoon makes coffee. When she emerges, wrapped in a towel, he hands her the cup. Their fingers touch. Neither one pulls away. They eat breakfast together at the kitchen counter. Silently, not because they have nothing to say, but because no unnecessary words are needed. Understanding hangs in the air. Ayana puts down her empty cup. We can't go on like this, she says. I can't live here. You can't keep me here forever. And neither of us wants this to end. Badly. Daeyoon nods, looking at her cup. I know. I've been thinking about it all night. Holding you is a constant risk, for you and for me. Letting go is believing. He looks at her. I think I can believe. Why? She asks. Because of last night? He shakes his head. No. Because of what came before. Because of the way you admitted your stupidity. Because you didn't try to lie yesterday. You were honest. Even when it wasn't profitable. I can tell when people are lying. You're not. You're not a professional liar. You're just a person who got into trouble. He pauses. And I don't want to hurt you either. Not just because it's irrational. Because you've become important. Over the past few days, Ayana feels her throat tighten. His words mean something. So much something. I don't want to hurt you either, Dahyun. Even knowing who you are. Even knowing that maybe I should. I don't want to be the one to ruin your life. She takes a deep breath. Then we need a way out. One that allows us both to move on. Go ahead, he says. You're smart. Forget, Ayana says. Really? I walk out the door. I pretend I don't know anything. I forget this address. I erase it from my memory. As much as possible. To me, you are Dahyun from the club. And no one else. You let me go. And we never look for each other again. We don't try to contact. We disappear from each other's lives forever. He looks at her carefully. Can you? Just forget? I have to, she answers honestly. For my peace of mind. For the opportunity to move on with my life. And you? Will you be able to let go? Knowing that I can remember everything? He's silent for a long moment, studying her face. I think so, because if I don't let you go, I'll have to become a real monster to you. And I don't want you to see me that way. And I believe you. It's irrational. Stupid. But I believe. He extends his hand across the counter, palm up. It's a gesture of trust. Deal? Ayana looks at his hand, then slowly places hers in his. His fingers close around hers. Warm, firm, but not painful. The deal, she says. I forget the address. You let me go. And we never talk about this week again. They remain like this, holding hands across the bar in the morning sunlight. It's not a happy ending. It's a bittersweet, adult truce. But it's a way out. The only one they could find that wouldn't destroy each other. They both know they'll remember. They'll dream about each other. But they gave their word. And in this strange, distorted reality they've created, their word to each other is the only thing of value they have left. The elevator door closes behind her with a soft hiss. Ayana stands in the entryway of an ordinary apartment building. Her home. It's a weekday morning. Somewhere, she hears a child crying and a door slamming. She climbs the stairs to her floor. Her legs feel heavy, like they're filled with lead. She takes her keys out of her jeans pocket. They were returned to her before she left, along with her purse. Everything is there. Phone, wallet, makeup bag. As if she really had just returned from a party. The key goes into the lock. There's a creak. The door opens. The familiar smell of her apartment. Floor cleaner, a hint of dust. Coffee. Everything is the same as it was a few days ago. And yet, everything is completely different. She walks in and locks the door. She leans her back against it and closes her eyes. Silence. Not the booming, oppressive silence of his apartment, but a normal, homely silence. The ticking of the kitchen clock can be heard. She goes into the shower. She stands under the hot water for a long time, until her skin turns red. She scrubs herself with a washcloth, as if trying to wash away not dirt but memories. The smell of someone else's soap, the feel of someone else's hands. She puts on an old cotton robe, the most familiar, the most personal. Then she turns on her phone. It comes to life, and the screen fills with notifications. Missed calls from a friend she was supposed to meet at the club. Messages. Hey, where are you? Are you okay? Ayana, you're scaring me. Call me back. Then the messages thin out. Apparently, her friend assumed she'd just met someone and disappeared for a couple of days. That happens sometimes. I missed 2 calls from work, then a text from my boss. Okoro, you're not at work. Please provide an explanation. His last message from yesterday was, consider this a formal warning. Reporting to work without a valid excuse is mandatory. Ayana sits on the edge of the bed. She has to come up with a story. Illness, an urgent departure, family problems. Her brain, accustomed to bureaucratic formulations, frantically searches for a plausible option. But all her thoughts return to him, to his face on the pillow this morning, to his words. I believe you. She calls her boss. She says in a hoarse voice that she had a severe migraine attack, lost her phone, was flat on her back, and only just recovered. Her boss grumbles and demands a doctor's note, but there's relief in her voice. Nothing serious happened, just an unruly intern. She promises to provide an explanation. Then she calls her friend. She tells the same story, but more casually. Sorry, my head was splitting. I just zoned out, went home, and slept for 2 days. Her friend laughs. Poor thing. Well, next time, let me know. I was worried. Lying comes surprisingly easily to her. The words flow smoothly. She fits back into her life like a gear that briefly fell out of the mechanism, but she feels like that gear, empty inside, moving by inertia. She goes to work the next day. Her colleagues nod. Someone asks if everything is okay. She smiles and says, yeah, just a migraine sometimes. She sits down at her desk, piled high with folders of documents. She opens the first one. Numbers, seals, signatures. Everything matters. Everything is important for something. But for her now, it's just paper. Her fingers turn the pages, her eyes skim the lines, but her brain refuses to process it. He's there, in that empty, quiet apartment upstairs. Is he thinking about her? Regrets her? Or has he already erased her from his memory, like an annoying nuisance that has been eliminated? That evening, she tries to cook dinner like he did that night, but the food tastes bland. She turns on the TV to drown out the silence. She sits on the sofa and hugs her knees. Her apartment seems too small, too cluttered, too noisy from their absence. She misses the space and the silence, and his silent presence somewhere in the room. Dahyun stands in the middle of her living room. Sunlight streams brightly through the windows, illuminating every square inch of the immaculate parquet floor, every facet of the minimalist furniture. Everything is in its place. Not a single thing has been moved. Not a trace. It seems like nothing has changed. It has always been this way. Silence, order, control. But the silence is different now. Before, it was neutral, background, like a buzzing in the ears. Now it's loud. You can hear the echo of her footsteps as she nervously paced the room. The echo of the dishes as she cooked dinner. The echo of her laughter. That quiet, hesitant one that escaped her lips last night. He walks into the kitchen. A coffee machine. 2 clean cups on the counter. He takes one. The one she drank from. He puts it back. He opens the refrigerator. The food is neatly laid out, but traces of yesterday's preparation are visible. A few chopped vegetables in a container. An open sauce. Not his doing, hers. He closes the door and rests his forehead against the cold metal. Emptiness. Not the familiar working emptiness he so carefully cultivated around himself, but a different one. Stinging, palpable. It feels like physical pressure in his chest. He returns to the living room. His gaze falls on the sofa. He sees more than just a piece of furniture. He sees the indentation in the cushion where she sat with her legs tucked under her. He sees the spot by the window where she spent hours looking down at the city. These spots seem marked now, isolated in the monotonous landscape of his existence. He tries to work. He sits down at his desk in his office and opens his laptop. On the screen are numbers, charts, reports. Everything demands his attention, decisions, commands. Before, he would have immersed himself in this. It was his world, the only one that mattered. The numbers are swimming before his eyes now. He finds himself staring at a single spot on the screen for 5 minutes now, thinking not about the cash flow, but about the look on her face when she said, "My approach was stupid," about how she flinched at unexpected sounds, about how her hand lay in his this morning, tight and trusting. He gets up and goes out into the living room again. He walks around its perimeter. Aimlessly, he enters the bedroom. The bed is made, impeccably, but for him, her outline on the sheets will forever remain there. The scent of her shampoo on the pillow. He is a ghost, returned to his abode after a brief contact with the living world. And this world, embodied in her, left behind not disorder and menace, but a quiet, haunting emptiness. An emptiness that is louder than any noise. It makes him reflect on how all these years his existence, so protected and controlled, was simply a beautiful, perfect void. There was nothing to touch, nothing to remember, nothing to lose. Now there's something to lose, even if it's lost by mutual agreement. He's lost his peace. He's lost the confidence that his loneliness is a strength, not a curse. He approaches the huge window and looks out at the city where she is now hiding. He doesn't know where her home is. He doesn't know her routine, and he should be glad of it. So safe, so right. But instead, he feels only this new, huge emptiness inside the 4 walls, which suddenly stopped being a fortress and turned into just a very quiet, very spacious place where he misses the sound of her breathing. Several weeks passed. Autumn was becoming more noticeable. The air was cool. The sky was covered with gray clouds. Ayana went out for her lunch break. She needed to buy a new notebook for work and just take a walk to clear her head. The documents, the numbers, the endless reports, it all began to make sense again, but a feeling of emptiness lingered in the background, like a quiet hum. She goes into a small stationery store, chooses a simple notebook with a dark blue cover. She pays and goes outside. Across the street is a small cafe with large windows. The coffee is good, and she decides to go in. She needs something warm in her hands to ward off the autumn chill and the inner tremors that sometimes wash over her without reason. She opens the door. The bell rings. The smell of freshly ground coffee and sweet pastries fills the air. The cafe is sparsely populated. A couple by the window. A student with a laptop in the corner. She approaches the counter to order, her gaze automatically gliding around the room, and freezes. He sits at the far table, in the shadow of a high shelf of books. Lee De-yoon of espresso sits in front of him, a closed newspaper lying on the table. He's looking out the window, but it's clear his thoughts are elsewhere. He looks ordinary. An expensive but unremarkable dark jacket, dark jeans, no security guards nearby, no aura of danger, just a man drinking coffee alone. Ayana's heart gives a sharp, painful jolt. All the air feels knocked out of her lungs. She freezes halfway to the counter. Her first instinct is to turn and leave, quickly, before he sees. But it's too late. His gaze, as if sensing someone's attention, breaks away from the window and slowly turns toward the entrance. He sees her. His eyes widen slightly too, a slight, barely perceptible movement of the eyelids. He didn't expect it, not at all. His hand holding the cup freezes, halfway to his lips. They look at each other across the half-empty cafe, a few seconds that drag on like hours. The world around them, the sound of the coffee machine, the soft music, the couple's conversation by the window, all fades into a haze. There's only this gaze. He's the first to come to his senses. Very slowly, barely nodding, he gestures with his gaze to the empty chair across from him. Not an invitation, more of a question. Will you come? Ayana licks her suddenly dry lips. One thought is pounding in her head. The deal! We were never supposed to see each other again. Never! But her feet, as if against her will, take a step, then another. She doesn't approach the counter. She walks across the room to his table. She stops at the table. She doesn't sit. Hi, he says first. His voice is quiet, even, like that morning. There's no threat in it, no false joy. It's unexpected. Yes, Ayana breathes. I'm just getting coffee. He looks at her empty hands, then at the notebook in her shoulder bag. Sit down, he says, and after a pause he adds, please, just for a minute. I'll leave if you want. There's something new in his tone. Uncertainty? She nods, almost unconsciously, and sits down in the chair opposite. He pushes his newspaper aside, making room. An awkward silence falls. They both look everywhere but at each other. At his cup, at the napkin holder, at the pattern on the tabletop. I'll order you something, he says, breaking the silence. He raises his hand, catching the waitress's eye. Cappuccino? As in, he trails off. Cappuccino? He asks Ayana. She nods. Yes, thank you. He orders, his voice calm and businesslike. While the waitress prepares, they fall silent again. But this isn't the heavy, hostile silence from the apartment. This is the silence of two people who know each other too well and too poorly at the same time, and don't know how to act now. The waitress brings a cappuccino with a heart-shaped froth. Ayana takes the cup, feeling the warmth through the ceramic. How are you? De-hyun asks. A perfectly normal question, but coming from him, it sounds like something enormous. Ayana says, looking at the foam. Working, living, like everyone else. She takes a sip. And you? He shrugs. The same. Work. Things to do. Same old business. He pauses. Only. The silence grew louder. She looks up at him knowingly. Their eyes meet. And in that moment, something breaks. The mask of complete detachment cracks. She sees in his eyes the same tired emptiness she feels. I wasn't looking for this meeting, he says quietly, but very clearly. I swear, it was an accident. I'm rarely in this part of town. It's just, today was necessary. Ayana answers just as quietly. Me too. I was just passing by. Another pause. But now it's not so unbearable. Your boss believes it's a migraine? He asks with a slight, barely perceptible smirk. She can't help but smile back. Weakly. He believed me. He demanded a certificate. I had to go to the doctor and beg for it. Now I have an official document in my file about a non-existent migraine. He laughs quietly. A real low laugh. She's never heard it before. Sorry, because of me. Not because of you, because of my stupidity, she corrects, repeating her old words. But now there's no bitterness in them, only a tired statement. You moved? From that address? The question blurts out, and it breaks their unspoken rule, not to talk about what happened, but she needs to know. He shakes his head. No, it's too complicated. Too much is involved. But I've stepped up my measures, and I don't spend the night there every night. He looks at her. Have you tried to find him? The address? No, she says honestly. I try not to think about him. When he pops into my mind, I shift my thoughts to something else. To work, to shopping, to anything. It turns out, sometimes, not always. They fall silent again, but this time as accomplices, sharing the difficult work of forgetting. And are you able to do it? Not think? She asks. He looks at his empty espresso cup. No, he admits simply. It's not working. The cafe, it's different. It doesn't feel so empty anymore. There are memories in it now. They're in the way. This confession is worth a lot. From a person who has been a ghost all his life. She understands it. I'm sorry, she says. And it's true. It's not worth it. It was my idea. And it was the right one. It's just, he searches for words. It just turned out to be harder than I thought. Living, knowing that somewhere there is a person who knows, and who didn't betray. He says this not as a compliment, but as a fact. And for Ayana, this is more important than any compliment. She kept her word, and he appreciates that. We're breaking the agreement just by talking, she notes. Yes, he agrees. But we already broke it the moment we saw each other. One conversation won't make things worse. If you don't mind, she shrugs. She doesn't mind, and that scares her more than it should. Okay, she says. Just for 1 cup of coffee. The coffee cup is already empty. The foam has dried around the edges. They sit and look out the window, where people with bags pass, children run, cars go by. An ordinary city day. But inside this cafe, time seems to stand still. Ayana knows she has to get up and leave. Now. According to their agreement, this meeting is already a violation. Talking is a double violation. Every minute spent at the table makes things worse. She gathers the strength to say, I have to go. Her fingers tighten around the handle of her bag. Dahyun looks not out the window, but at her hands. He sees the movement, the intent to leave. Ayana, he says quietly before she can get up. She freezes, looking at him. Yes? He looks away, as if embarrassed by what he's about to say. He twirls the empty espresso cup in his hands. That meeting, it was a mistake, an accident. I understand that. He pauses, collecting his thoughts. But I don't want this to be the last one. Ayana stops breathing. What do you mean? He finally looks her straight in the eyes. There's no familiar steel in his gaze. There's vulnerability and determination. I want to see you again. On purpose. Not in a month. Not by accident. Just to meet. To talk. Like now. He says this as if he's proposing something unimaginably complex and dangerous. Which, of course, is true. We can't, Ayana replies automatically. But there's no force in her voice. A treaty. The agreement was to forget and not look for each other, he recalls. We've already broken it, by accident. But the fact remains. We're sitting here, and we don't want this to end in 5 minutes. He's right. She doesn't want to leave. The thought of plunging back into the gray everyday life of paperwork and an empty apartment seems unbearable now. This is madness, Dahyun. You know who I am. I know who you are. Every meeting is a risk. For you, a huge one. I know, he agrees. And for you too. I've weighed it all. Sitting here for the last 20 minutes. The risks, they're enormous. But I still want to ask. He leans a little closer across the table, lowering his voice. Can I call you? Can we meet again? This is not an order. It is a request. From a man who never asks for anything. Ayana looks at his face. She sees traces of fatigue under his eyes. She sees the same internal struggle she's experiencing. He's afraid. But he still asks. She thinks about her department, about the files, about her boss, about the duty she's far from fulfilling. She thinks about his world, about his enemies, about the bullet that might find him, or her, because of such carelessness. This is the most reckless act of her life, much more reckless than that first meeting at the club. Then she acted out of ignorance. Now she knows everything. And still, She doesn't see a boss. She doesn't see a ghost. She sees a man who misses her, who is also lonely, for whom her presence in that empty apartment gave something real, and she realizes she wants the same thing. She wants to see him again as he is without his mask, to hear his low laughter, to share a silence that won't oppress but will be shared. She takes a deep breath, feeling her heart pounding in her throat. "Okay," she says, her voice a little hoarse. "Just very carefully, very rarely, and nowhere near your house or my work." An expression she's never seen before crosses his face. It's relief, mixed with surprise and a kind of childish joy. He quickly checks himself, but she notices it. "Of course," he says quickly. "I'll think of everything, if you agree. Safe locations. Random. No contact with us." He takes a simple, unremarkable phone out of his pocket, not his main one. "This number isn't linked to anything. It's just for this. For calling you. You don't have to answer. You can hang up any time." He writes the number down on a clean paper napkin and hands it to her. Ayana takes the napkin. The numbers are written clearly. It's a bridge across the chasm they've created themselves. "I won't call every day," he says. "I won't be a bother, just to arrange a meeting. If you want." She nods, clutching the napkin in her palm. Her fingers tremble. "Okay." She stands up. It's time to go. She can't stand being here any longer, caught in the crosshairs of her thoughts and his gaze. "Goodbye, Dahyun." "Goodbye, Ayana." He doesn't get up. He remains seated, watching her leave the cafe without turning around. The napkin with the number on it burns in her pocket like a coal. The first date takes place a week later. He calls from the same number early on Saturday morning. A short call. His voice is even. "Today, 3 o'clock, the City Botanical Garden. A bench by the big pond. If you can." She could have chosen not to come. She had 1,000 reasons. But at 3 o'clock, she was already sitting on the designated bench, wrapped in an autumn coat. The garden was almost empty due to the cool weather. Only a few people were strolling in the distance. He approaches 10 minutes later, dressed simply, wearing a cap, his head slightly bowed. He sits down next to her without looking at her. They look at the ducks in the pond. "Hello," he says after a few minutes. "Hello," she replies. They talk about trivial things, about how the trees have changed, about whether the ducks are cold in the water. Not a word about the past, not a word about work, not a word about danger, just two voices in a quiet autumn garden. The meeting lasts 40 minutes. Then he stands up, nods to her, and leaves first, without looking back. She sits for another 10 minutes, then walks off in the opposite direction. Their second date is an evening movie on the outskirts of town. He buys 2 tickets to some low-budget film that no one is watching. They sit in the half-empty theater in the back row. In the darkness, his hand finds hers. He simply holds her palm in his, firmly, warmly. They don't look at each other, staring at the screen. Neither one says a word, but it's more than any conversation. The third meeting is another cafe, but in a different neighborhood, small and inconspicuous. This time they talk more. About books. It turns out he reads, but only non-fiction, history, and economics. About music. She has simpler tastes, pop. He prefers classical jazz, but he doesn't judge her choice. They laugh. Laughter comes easier and easier. He always chooses the places himself. Always neutral, public, but secluded. He's never late and never stays longer than an hour. He never asks about her work in the police. She never asks about his business. They build a new world, small, fragile, existing only in these secluded hours. A world in which he is simply Dahyun, and she is simply Ayana. For Ayana, life is split in two. There's her ordinary life. She arrives at work at 9. She puts on her usual clothes, blouses, skirts, and business trousers. She pretends to be immersed in paperwork. She attends meetings, nods, and takes notes. She eats lunch with colleagues in the cafeteria, laughs at their jokes, and discusses new orders. She is Ayana's intern. Okoro, a little absent-minded but conscientious, makes it clear she's seeing someone, a guy, to explain her occasional late arrivals or pensiveness. Her colleagues wink, happy for her. But this life seems as flat as the paper in her folders. It moves by inertia. Her thoughts are constantly somewhere else, on the next meeting, on that phone number saved under the name D. She catches herself smiling at something while checking a report, and quickly puts on a cowardly, serious face. Fear has become her constant companion, but it's not an acute fear of immediate danger. It's a quiet background dread that she might be discovered, that one of her colleagues will see her with him, that someone will recognize him and follow them. that her phone is being tapped. Though she knows it's paranoia, she can't stop herself. That one small mistake, one false step, will ruin both their lives. When the phone rings with Dee's number, she catches her breath. She never answers it in public. She goes to the restroom or the stairs. His voice on the other end of the line, low, calm, has a calming and adrenaline-inducing effect on her at the same time. And in the evening, returning to her apartment, she often stands in the middle of the room and feels torn. Here are her things, her world, but it feels alien. Her real life, the life in which she feels alive, is those secluded hours in the garden, at the cinema, in the cafe. A life she must hide from everyone. She lives on a knife's edge. On one side is duty, career, security, and boredom. On the other is a forbidden affair, danger, feelings that make her dizzy, and a man who sees her not as a police trainee, but simply as a woman. And she doesn't know how long she can maintain this balance. But every time she receives his message, she knows she'll go along with it. Because in his presence, this double life, this fear, it all makes sense. In his presence, she feels whole, even if it's the most dangerous feeling in her life. Dahyun has always been cautious. Now his caution is turning into something else. Paranoia, well-founded and calculated. He trades in his basic phone for another, even cheaper and more anonymous one, every 2 weeks. He dismantles the old one, destroys the SIM card, and sinks the case in a river in another neighborhood. He buys phones at random stores, always with cash, and never looks at the cameras. He no longer schedules meetings by calling from a new number. He uses one-time codes. He sends text messages to her number from a simple email account set up at an internet cafe. One message, a string of numbers and letters. For example, SR23CP14. To Ayana, it's nonsense. To him, it's instructions. W8 is Wednesday. 23 is the time. CP is Central Park. 14 is the number of the bench near the north entrance. After sending, he deletes the account. He never takes her to the same place twice. He studies the city map, looking for quiet streets, empty squares, little-known museums, library cafes. He arrives early and checks the area. He looks for suspicious faces, cars parked too long. He watches people passing by, assessing their posture, their gaze, their hands. He changes his appearance, not radically, subtle, a different cap, glasses without prescription, a different colored jacket, rougher shoes. He buys things at thrift stores and leaves them in dumpsters after meetings. He never goes to a meeting directly from his home or office. He takes several public transportation transfers, sometimes getting off a couple of stops before the one he needs, and walking, meandering through courtyards. He constantly checks the reflections in shop windows, checking to see if anyone is following him. Sometimes he cancels at the last minute. He just doesn't show up. He doesn't text or call. He might have seen something he didn't like. Too many people. A familiar face in the distance. A police car on the next street. Ayana understands this. She waits an hour and then leaves. No questions afterward. That's their rule. His mind now operates on 2 fronts. The first is his usual work, managing matters, making decisions, meeting people from his world. The second is creating and protecting this small parallel world in which only she exists. The second world requires more energy than the first. Every meeting is a complex operation, a risk he can't afford to miscalculate. But when he finally sees her, sitting on the designated bench or standing by the bookstore window, all that tension eases for a moment. It's worth it, every time. But it also makes him even more ruthless with himself when it comes to safety, because the price of a mistake isn't just his freedom now, it's hers too. Ayana has a big day at work. A large batch of documents has arrived for urgent review. They're from the finance department, related to an investigation into a local business. Hundreds of accounts and transactions need to be reconciled, and discrepancies need to be found. She's sitting at her computer. On the screen are spreadsheets, numbers, and company names. Her colleagues are buzzing around her, phones are ringing, and the printer is clicking. She needs to stay focused, but her thoughts are far away. They had a meeting yesterday, a short one, just 20 minutes in an empty hall of the local history museum. They stood in front of a display case of old coins, pretending to examine the exhibit. He said he was leaving for a few days. On business. He didn't say where. He didn't say why. Simply, I won't be there. Don't worry. She nodded then. She said, okay, be careful. But now, amid these dry numbers, she's consumed by anxiety. On business. What does that mean? Dangerous business? Perhaps. And if something goes wrong, she won't even know. He'll just disappear. And she'll never be able to ask anyone, tell anyone. She'll just have to go on living, not knowing. She imagines him somewhere bad, with bad people. She imagines the worst. Her palms become clammy. She shakes her head, trying to clear the thoughts. Work, Ayana. Focus. She returns to the spreadsheet. She needs to check that the amounts in the incoming transfer and received columns match. She enters the formula and drags it across several lines. The computer returns the result. She scans the column. All zeros. So there are no discrepancies. She moves on to the next sheet, and then her gaze catches the name of the company. It's familiar. Not very, but familiar. She's heard it somewhere. She freezes, peering. Hanul Trading. She'd definitely heard it. Not at work, from him, in passing. Once, when he was talking on the phone in Korean, waiting for her in the car, he never dropped her off close to home. They met in neutral parking lots. He'd said the name, she'd memorized the sound, and now she sees it in an official police document related to the investigation. An icy wave rolls down her spine. Her fingers freeze over the keyboard. She sits and looks at these two words. Hommas, Ommimis, Hanul Trading. A bridge between her two worlds, between her quiet, furtive encounters and the grim reality of his dealings, between her feelings and her duty. What should she do? Report it? Tell her handler she saw a possible connection? That's her job. That's what she's paid for. That's what she swore an oath to. But if she does, it could set off a chain of events. The investigation could lead back to him, even if it took 10 hands. It could be his undoing. She sits motionless, feeling the room swim around her. The noise of her colleagues fades into a distant hum. Her entire being is torn apart. Okoro! The chief's sharp voice breaks her from her stupor. She flinches and turns around. The chief is standing in the doorway of his office, frowning. A report on the Solenses case. You said by noon. Ayana looks at him blankly. Then she nods automatically. Yes. Now I'll finish it. She quickly, almost in panic, closes the tab with the document that had that name. She opens another file. Her hands are shaking. She takes several deep breaths. Not now. I'll think about it later. Right now, it's just work. She forces herself to delve into the Sun report. She writes conclusions, checks dates, but her thoughts keep returning to the tab she closed, to those two words. She almost made a mistake. Not a technical one, much worse. She almost allowed her personal, forbidden feelings to interfere with her professional duty. Or was it the other way around? She doesn't know. She only knows she's teetering on the edge of a precipice, and this incident showed her just how thin the ice is beneath her feet. One wrong thought, one emotional decision, and everything could collapse. She hands the report to her boss. He takes a quick look and nods. Accepted. She returns to her seat, opens the document again, looks at Hanul Trading. She doesn't mark it. She doesn't tell anyone. She just saves the file and puts it aside. For now, this is her moment of weakness. And she understands that there may be more such moments, and each time, the choice will become more difficult. The meetings continue, but a new tone takes over. The intense excitement of mystery gradually wears off, revealing a nervous system that's constantly on edge. They laugh less and less. More and more often, they simply remain silent, holding hands, each lost in their own heavy thoughts. One evening, they meet on an empty observation deck atop an old building. The city below is a sea of lights. The wind is cold and sharp. Ayana stands, hugging herself, looking into the distance. Dahyun stands next to her, her hands in her pockets. I can't do this anymore, she says quietly, the wind almost carrying her words away. I can't do this anymore. He doesn't answer right away. He just looks at the same horizon. What happened? He finally asks. That's it. She turns to him. Her face looks very tired in the distant light. I live in constant fear. At work, I jump at every call. I see documents that could be connected to your world, and I don't know what to do with them. I lie to colleagues, bosses, friends. Every day I wake up and think, what if everything comes out today? It's exhausting. He nods without looking at her. I understand. It's the same for me. Every meeting we have is a carefully planned operation. I spend more energy trying to hide it than on the meeting itself. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. I scan every shadow. I can't afford to relax for a second. Not with you. Not without you. He exhales, his breath drifting away on the wind. And I constantly think about how I'm putting you in danger, just by being around you. If one of my competitors gets to you, if your colleagues start digging, I can't protect you without locking you back within 4 walls, and I don't want that. I don't want to be your jailer." His words hit the nail on the head. She thought he saw only the risk to himself, but he thinks of her safety too. "So we both understand," Ayana says. "This can't go on. We can't keep seeing each other in secret for the rest of our lives. Sooner or later, they'll find us, or we'll fall. It's like walking on thin ice, and it's getting thinner every day." "Yes," he agrees. "This can't go on. Something needs to change." Silence falls, filled with the sound of the wind and the hum of the city below. "What can we change?" she asks, her voice hopeless. "You can't stop being who you are. I can't throw everything I know out of my head and stop being a police officer. We're trapped in these roles." Dahyun slowly turns to face her. The wind ruffles his hair. "There's one option," he says. "The most radical, the most dangerous, but it's the only one that offers a chance." She looks at him, already guessing. "Leave," he says simply. "Both of us, from here, completely." The words hang in the air, as huge and cold as the night city beneath them. "Leave?" Ayana asks again. "Where? How? You have everything here. Things to do. People. Power." "This whole thing is a cage," he replies harshly. "I realized that when you left. And even more so when we started dating again. This isn't life. It's a role. And it leaves no room for anything real. Not for you. What about my life? My career, my family, my friends?" Her voice trembles not from fear, but from the scale of what he's talking about. "I know. I'm asking the impossible. I'm asking you to give up everything. For me, for us." He runs a hand over his face. "It's selfish. I understand that. But I don't see any other way we can be together and still live, not just survive." Ayana turns away, looking at the lights. She imagines her small apartment, her desk at work, her boss's face, her friend's laughter. All of this is familiar, habitual, imperfect, but hers. Then she imagines him, his quiet presence, his rare smile, that feeling of wholeness she feels only with him, despite all the fear and risk, and the emptiness that returned when he was gone. "And if we leave, what then?" she asks, still looking into the distance. "You can't be a boss from somewhere far away. I can't work in the police. What will we be?" "I don't know," he admits honestly. "I have money. Not all of it, but enough to start somewhere anew. Quietly, modestly. Maybe buy a small business, a cafe, or a store. Something legal. And you'll be able to do whatever you want. Study, work, just live. Without lying, without fear of being watched." He talks about simple things. About a life he himself probably never knew. She turns and looks him in the eyes. "Are you serious? Are you ready to give it all up?" He takes her hands. His palms are warm despite the cold. "I'm ready to try. For a chance. For waking up next to you, not as a secret, but as a wife. Not having to hide. Not having to fear for you every second. Yes, I'm ready." The word wife sounds unfamiliar and frightening, but also correct. "What if it doesn't work out?" she whispers. "What if they find you? What if I can't get used to it? What if we fall out?" "If it doesn't work out," he says quietly, "at least we tried. It will be better than slowly going mad with fear and anguish here. I can't promise it will be easy. I can only promise that I will try." With all my might, they stand holding hands in the wind, high above the city that has been both their home and their prison. They don't know what will happen next. They don't know where they'll go. They don't know if it will work out. They only know that they want to be together. Not stealthily, not secretly, but together. And to do that, they need to burn their bridges to this life. It's the craziest decision of their lives. Far crazier than their first meeting. But for the first time in a long time, there's no fear in Ayana's eyes. There's determination and hope, as fragile and bright as the city lights below. She squeezes his hands tighter. "Okay," she says. "Let's try it." He doesn't smile. He simply nods, his gaze reflecting equal parts relief and dread. "Okay, then we need to plan, very carefully, and quickly." They no longer look at the city. They look at each other. Before them lies an uncertain future, full of dangers and uncertainty, but they will walk into it together. And that is enough for now. They don't stand there for long. The cold wind on the roof cuts right through them, reminding them that even high above the city, they're not safe. Dahyun is the first to let go of her hands. "It's too open here. Let's go," he says, his voice becoming businesslike and collected again. His eyes are already calculating. They descend the dark stairs in complete silence, save for the echo of their footsteps. Outside, he doesn't take her arm, doesn't come close. A few steps away. It's safer that way. But now this distance has a different meaning. It's not detachment. It's a temporary measure. He walks her to the corner, where a lighted, people-filled street begins. I'll contact you. In a new way. Be prepared at any time. Pack the essentials. Only what you can't live without. No documents linking you to your old life. No photographs, no diaries. Just cash, if you have any. Your passport, and one change of clothes. We'll buy everything else on site, he speaks quickly, quietly, looking not at her but at the street, assessing the situation. The passport. It'll be in the database, Ayana says, and her mind already begins to work in the same practical, frightening way. We'll work on it. I have people who can make new ones, good ones, but it will take a few days. So pack your things, but be prepared to wait for the signal. And live as usual, no strange movements. No sudden vacations or quitting your job. She nods, understanding. The game must go on until the very last moment. And you? How will you organize everything? A weary smile flickers across his face. That's what I can do. Organize. Only before I organize things. Now I need to organize disappearances. Mine and yours. It's more complicated. He looks directly at her for a second. Trust me on this one. I trust, she says. And it's true. In this strange criminal escape plan, she feels safer than she has in months. He nods, and without saying goodbye, turns and walks away in the opposite direction, disappearing into the darkness of the alley. The strangest days of Ayana's life begin. She lives by his instructions. She goes to work. She fulfills her duties. She smiles at her colleagues. In the evening, she returns to her apartment and begins the quiet, methodical work of letting go of her life. She opens the closet. Dresses, sweaters, jeans. She touches the fabric. She'll leave most of it behind. She'll take only dark, comfortable jeans, a few simple t-shirts, a warm sweater, a practical coat, everything that's neutral, something that won't attract attention. She puts it all in an old duffel bag that doesn't look new. She walks through the apartment. Books. A small collection of souvenirs from her trips with her parents. A graduation photo from the academy. A mug given to her by a friend. Each thing drags a memory with it, a hook that holds her here. She must rip these hooks out. She doesn't cry. She feels numb. It's like she's preparing for her own death. Ayana's death. Okoro, a police trainee. She takes her passport. She looks at her official serious photo. She puts it in the side pocket of her backpack. Then she gathers up all the cash she has at home. Not much. She'll leave the cards behind. Their use can be tracked. The hardest part is the phone. Her whole life is on it. Contacts, photos, messages. She turns it off, takes out the SIM card, and breaks it in half. She keeps the phone for now. She'll throw it away at the last minute, far from home. At work, she's even more focused. She doesn't allow herself to overthink things. She simply gets things done. Her boss even praises her for her focus. She smiles and stares into space behind him. She doesn't say goodbye to anyone. She doesn't call her parents in another city. She doesn't write to her friend. Any unusual action, any word goodbye, could raise questions, suspicions. She should simply disappear. 3 days later, a signal arrives. Not on her phone, it's turned off. An email arrives in her work inbox from a non-existent sender. Subject, order confirmation, number 774. The body of the email contains only an address. Reknaya Station, storage locker, cell 12. During her lunch break, she goes out, ostensibly for coffee. She doesn't go to the nearest cafe, but takes a detour, catches a bus, and rides to the train station. Her heart is pounding, but her face is calm. She finds a storage locker. In compartment 12 is the key to another, larger one. In that compartment is a simple canvas bag. Inside is an envelope with money, a wad of medium-denomination bills, a new basic phone, charged with one stored contact card, and a small package. Inside the package are 2 new passports. One has her photo, but a different first name, a different last name, citizenship of a different country. The passport looks absolutely genuine. She flips through the hand pages. There are even stamps for non-existent trips from the last 2 years. The second passport is in his name, or rather, in a new name. She looks at his photograph. He looks at the camera neutrally, as in all official photos. But now he is a different person. Under the passports lies a piece of paper, written on it in clear handwriting. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Northern Gate Shopping Center, parking lot, level B2, blue van number 347. Be there. Don't be late. Don't take unnecessary items. Destroy the old phone. From now on, use only this one. D. She puts everything back in her bag except the new phone. She later throws the old phone in the trash bin at another station, after erasing its memory and resetting it. In the evening, she sits in her nearly empty apartment. Her backpack is by the door. Her apartment keys are on the table. She leaves everything as is. She won't pay next month's rent. Soon, notices will arrive, and then her belongings will be inventoried. They will start looking for her as missing. But by then, she will no longer be in the country. She's not sleeping. She's sitting by the window, looking out at the familiar courtyard. She's thinking about her parents, how worried they'll be, what they'll think. She's imagining her boss's face when she doesn't show up for work, her friend, who'll keep calling and not getting an answer. Guilt chokes her. She betrays everyone who knew her. For the sake of a man the world considers a criminal, for the sake of a feeling that began with a kidnapping, she asks herself if this is right, and there is no answer. There is only emptiness and a cold determination to go all the way. Because there is no turning back, she has made a choice. In the morning, she wakes up to her usual alarm clock. She goes to work for the last time. She sits at her desk, pretending to work. At 1 p.m., she tells a colleague she's not feeling well and leaves. Forever. She takes a bus to the other end of the city, then the metro. She watches to see if she's being followed. It seems they aren't. She arrives at the Northern Gate Shopping Center at 10 to 2. She goes down to parking lot B2. It's cool here. Smells of gasoline and concrete. She finds a blue van. Number 347. She stops a few meters away. Her hands are shaking. She puts them in her coat pockets. There's no one near the van. Only the hazard lights are flashing. She takes a deep breath and walks to the side door. Before she can knock, the door slides open. It's dim inside. Only the silhouette of the man in the driver's seat is visible. And Da-hyun, sitting on one of the pairs. He's wearing simple dark clothes, his face tense. He offers her his hand. Come in, quickly! She grabs his hand. He pulls her inside. The door immediately closes with a dull thud. The locks click into place. She finds herself in a cramped space. The van starts to move, rocking gently. Inside, it smells of dust and metal. He still holds her hand in the darkness. His fingers are cold. Is everything okay? He asks in a whisper. She nods, though he probably can't see. Then she finds her voice. Yes, I'm here. He lets go of her hand. You can hear him lean back against something. Okay. Now just sit. Don't make any noise. It's going to be a long ride. First to the warehouse, then we'll change vehicles. She sits down on another crate, leaning her back against the wall of the van. In the complete darkness, the only sounds she can hear are the vibrations of the engine and the turns of the car. She closes her eyes. They've done it. They're on their way. Where, she doesn't know. What will happen, she doesn't know. There's only movement forward, into the unknown, and his presence somewhere nearby in the darkness. That's enough for now. The van leaves the city, and Ayana Okoro gradually ceases to exist. Someone else's life begins. A life full of fear, hope, and the greatest risk in the world. The risk of trusting another person completely. The van drives for a long time. Ayana sits in the darkness, feeling every bump under the wheels. Da-hyun's breathing is even, but not calm, beside her. He's as alert as a string. They don't speak. The noise of the engine fills the entire space. After a while, the van stops. The door opens. They're not outside, but inside some kind of building, a garage or warehouse. The air smells of oil and dampness. Let's go, Da-hyun says curtly, and leaves. Ayana grabs her backpack and follows him. They have to pass through a dark warehouse, littered with boxes and bales. At the end, there's a nondescript gray car. Another man, not the van driver, silently hands Da-hyun the keys. They get into the car. Da-hyun is behind the wheel. He starts the engine, and they drive out of the warehouse gates and straight onto a country road. It's already getting dark. Now they are alone in the cabin. Silence falls, unfilled by the rumble of the van. Where are we? Ayana asks quietly. Far from the city. We're heading to the border. A different route. He answers quietly, his eyes fixed on the road. His hands grip the steering wheel tightly. Ayana looks out the window. Fields flash by, the occasional farmlight. Everything is foreign. Everything is new. She no longer recognizes this place. The fear is still there, a knot in my stomach. But there's also a strange feeling. Not freedom, not yet, but finality, the point of no return. All the decisions have been made. All that remains is to move forward. She looks at his profile in the dashboard light. He's focused. He's driving them both into a new life he never knew. She carefully places her hand on the seat between them, not touching him, just like that. A minute later, he covers her hand with his own, still looking at the road. His palm is firm and warm. And so they ride, into the night, into the unknown, without words. Only the dark road ahead and the touch of their hands, the only thing that feels real now.